Wherefore, laying aside all malice, and all guile, and hypocrisies, and envies, and all evil speakings, as newborn babes, desire the sincere milk of the word, that ye may grow thereby. I work on transportation, and I have an opportunity to see many people in a week's time, more than most people do. I see all kinds of people, and I'm always trying to deal with them in a way that the Lord will be pleased with, using the Bible as a standard of my conduct and all that whole package. And I came across a man in one place, one business, who was complaining, just murmuring, as the Bible would call it. Everything about the job was wrong. I'm only in these businesses for a short time, but you can pick up on people's attitudes and beliefs pretty quickly because they're going to tell you in one way or the other. And this man was just murmuring and just being profane, but I noticed he had a giant cross on his necklace. Everything's wrong, and he doesn't have much of a vocabulary, so he's got a curse, but he got a big cross on. And I quickly found myself becoming angry with this person, or as they would say, righteously indignant. He wasn't even really talking to me. He was talking to his coworkers, and they were laughing at what he was saying and agreeing with him. And I guess that was a common thing. They just were letting him go on. Well, they went away, and so it was just he and I standing back there alone for a few minutes. And I was about to leave. And as I did, I turned and I said, "Are you a Christian, man? I see you got a big cross on." And he wouldn't look at me. He didn't answer. I said, oh, it's just a decoration then. The cross, that's just a decoration? He said, nope. I said, so you're a Christian then? He said, yep. Still not looking at me. I guess he was embarrassed. He knew what I was going to. He knew what I was driving at. I said, I don't meet many Christians that are this bitter. You sound really bitter there, buddy. I didn't want to call him a brother because I don't know if he is a brother, even though he's got a big cross on. And I mean brother in a spiritual sense, in a Christian sense, not in a black American sense that they use brother. I don't use brother in that way. I don't call people brother like that. I call you brother if you're a brother in Christ. So I call him buddy and friend. I don't hear many Christians sounding that bitter, buddy. He still wouldn't look at me. He said, you ought to take that cross off. Still no answer. I just left. I guess I made my point. We all have our issues as Christians or just as people. And I'm no different, of course. But sometimes you need people to talk in that way. I need to talk to people that way. Because he's not representing it right. He got that big cross on. This is not the first time I've seen this man. Always the same attitude. But he's representing Christ on some level because he got a cross on. Maybe he's just fooling himself. Who knows? Maybe he's backslidden. Maybe he's a new Christian. Well, I don't think he's a new Christian because I've seen him before. And it wasn't that recently with the big cross on. Why is he wearing a cross? Is he a Christian? Yeah, that's not for me to judge. I understand. But you're telling me what you are by the way you act. And somebody need to talk to him like that. Who is he representing? What is the cross for? One of the thoughts that I had was, I'd like to know who his preacher is. If he goes to church, which, well, who knows? But if he does go to church, I want to see what his preacher's talking about. Who's his pastor? Because his pastor's not telling that church to lay aside malice and to watch their tongues, and that they're representatives of Christ in the world, that they're supposed to be lights shining, not part of the darkness, not part of the profanity. Now, again, understand, I'm watching myself to make sure I'm not going to stumble in that way, because I used to talk like this guy and was calling myself a Christian. I didn't have a big cross on, though. No, we all need to be talked to sometimes. We all need to be reminded of who we're representing. And you're representing somebody. You're representing one of two beings or entities, God or Satan, Jesus or the devil. That's the only two choices. You don't get to sit in the fence. The fence belongs to the darkness. You saying you're neutral? You saying that it's all in your mind or that you're that smart? You're with the devil now. Therefore, if any man be in Christ, he is a new creature. Old things are passed away. Behold, all things are become new. That ought to include the way we talk. We ought to have a new way of talking, new way of acting, new attitude, Do all things without murmuring. Do we have contentment in Christ? Do we really believe he can get us through any situation? Not get us out of the situation necessarily, but bring us through it. I understand that's why some people don't really believe in Christ, even though they'll talk about him or wear paraphernalia, just because they don't really believe that he's going to carry them through. That's why they're angry. That's why they don't have a peace or contentment, because they're not looking at Christ. They're looking at the situations. They're looking at the storm around them or the circumstances, and not the end of this. You got to look to the end of this. Let your faith carry you there, which he gave you the faith in the first place. You didn't bring it. And then at the same time, be thankful and have some peace as we're going through whatever we're going through. I remember another man at a business that I was visiting. This is some years ago. And it was another profane individual. At least he didn't have a big cross on him. But all he was doing was taking Jesus and God's name in vain. And taking the Lord's name in vain doesn't always mean that you're cursing or being profane necessarily. And sometimes it just means you're calling out his name, as people do when they say Jesus Christ, in a way that's like an exclamation or a profession of excitement. But this guy was just being profane, calling Jesus and God's name out in that way. And I felt that indignation coming up. And I said, "Hey man, you must be a Christian." He said, "Huh?" He's confused. I said, "Yeah, you've been calling Jesus and God's name ever since I walked in here. You just must be the greatest Christian ever. Glad to meet you, man." And he wouldn't look me in the face. He just looked down at the ground until I left. It's funny how calling people out like that will have that reaction sometimes. Some people are bold and they'll just buck up on you, bow up on you, however the expression goes. But most people, they're convicted. These two men I'm talking about here, they were very convicted. And they ought to be convicted. I mean, Christ is the only reason that they're even here and able to speak against them in that way and dishonor him in the way that they do with their tongues. "I am crucified with Christ, nevertheless I live. Yet not I, but Christ liveth in me. And the life which I now live in the flesh, I live by the faith of the Son of God, who loved me and gave himself for me."